Is your brain driving you crazy imagining a disastrous, catastrophic future? Now, more than ever, with the pandemic and the resultant economic and social stressors, your brain is probably in catastrophizing mode, like full on. The worst is coming. It's the end of your marriage, it's the end of your financial stability, it's the end of your health, right? Everything that could go wrong is going to come true. This is where your brain wants to go. These are the cycles it wants to spin down. You name the doomsday scenario, your brain is like ready and willing and going for it. So today I want to talk to you about how to stop catastrophizing, how to stop making yourself depressed and anxious with these catastrophic thoughts, these doomsday scenarios about your health, about the economic future of our country, about your personal economic future, about the pandemic, whatever it is that is making you catastrophize. We're going to talk today about how to stop that, how to get your brain back on track so you can start feeling better. For those of you who don't know me, I am Rachael Sloan. I help anxious people save their marriages by overcoming their intrusive thoughts in just 30 days. And you guys, catastrophizing is like intrusive thoughts on steroids. It's like when those thoughts that pop up that you don't want to think, that you don't want to be aware of, it's like they come up, but then they don't let go. They just go and go and go and build and build and build until like next thing you know in your mind, you are like alone, dying homeless under a bridge somewhere. That is where catastrophizing takes you. It is painful, it is unpleasant, and it is so hard to stop doing. So I would imagine with all the things going on in the world right now, you probably all have a lot of different intrusive thoughts, a lot of different catastrophizing thoughts. But I want to focus on the ones that are about your relationship, that are about your marriage, or about your partner. And I want to just tell you that it's okay that you have these catastrophizing thoughts. It's natural. It is not a sign that there is something wrong with you. It's actually kind of addicting to think these catastrophizing thoughts. And it's because there's a part of your brain, I like to call it the lizard brain. It's a primitive part of your brain that evolved to keep you alive when there were different threats. And when this part of your brain evolved, the threats it faced were almost always life or death. It was like literally lions in the savannah about to eat you, or the tribe or clan was going to throw you out and you were going to die alone in the winter outside of the cave. Like every threat was a life or death situation at the time when this lizard brain, this primitive part of your brain, evolved. And this is the part of your brain that evolved to be anxious and to catastrophize, to imagine any threat building into a bigger and bigger threat. So now, in the real world that most of us live in the Western world, the threats to you, the threats that you face are very rarely life and death, right? We're quite lucky. You have an angry email from your boss. You have a fight with your partner. You mess something up for work. You say something embarrassing in front of your friends or coworkers. None of these are actually life and death situations. But this part of your brain that evolved to keep you alive during life and death situations doesn't recognize the difference. It sees every threat as life or death. And so it, like any little drama, any little panic, any little cause for anxiety, it picks up on and it goes into like life or death survival mode. Like, this is what this part of your brain was made to do. It was made to keep you alive, get you through these dangerous threats, and like push you through to the other side so you don't die. And it never got the memo that like the email from your boss, the fight with your husband, the embarrassing thing you said after 3 glasses of wine with your girlfriends, never got the memo that those are not life and death situations. It's like there's a threat, it's life or death, full go, full mode. Like that part of your brain evolved for this. This is what it lives for. It's like addicted to the drama of any kind of threat. Any threat is life or death to this part of your brain, and it just goes full bore. So any kind of anxiety or threat is kind of addicting, and it's addicting to make it into a life or death issue because that's what that part of your brain evolved to do, because it assumed that it was a life or death issue and it better protect you. So now it loves to take the cough you have and build it up into full-on COVID, and you're never going to be healthy again, and you're going to end up on a ventilator and eventually die alone in the hospital. That's where your brain goes when you get the sniffles now, because it was designed to do that. Because back in the day, these kinds of things were life and death threats. It doesn't know the difference that it's not that way now. So the other reason, that's one reason that it's kind of addicting to catastrophize. It's because this part of your brain evolved to kind of enjoy these life and death threats. The other reason is that there's part of your brain that kind of likes the high of catastrophizing. So when you have a thought, an anxious thought or a catastrophic thought, you don't just have a sentence in your brain. You're not just like, oh my gosh, I'm sick and it's going to get worse and I'm going to end up in the hospital and on a ventilator and die alone under a bridge. Like, that's part of it. You have this verbal thought, this sentence in your mind that's a thought. But your thoughts are more complete than that. You also have a mental image that goes along with those words. And you also have a feeling in your body that goes along with that thought. So in some ways, when you have a catastrophic thought or a catastrophic chain of thoughts, you kind of get addicted. It's like watching a scary movie. Like, it's scary, it's horrific, but you can't look away. You can't stop watching. It's the same in your own brain. You have this verbal thought about what's going wrong. You project a mental image that you might not even be fully consciously aware of, but it's there. This like kind of mental movie that you're imagining this catastrophic future. You're imagining losing your job and not being able to pay your bills and ending up homeless. You're imagining getting sick and being alone in the hospital. You have a mental image. And you have a physical sensation. You have anxiety, you have fear, you have loneliness, you have panic, whatever the physical sensations are in your body. And you experience this, the visual, the auditory, the kinesthetic, the physical feeling of this imaginary future that doesn't exist except in your mind. It's only in your mind when you're catastrophizing. But you imagine it so fully, you see it, you feel it, you hear it. It's like kind of addicting. It's kind of like watching a horror movie. It doesn't feel good. You don't like it, but you cannot look away. So because our brains are so good at creating a reality, even when it's only imaginary, it's hard to turn away from that reality because you experience it so fully. So catastrophizing is really natural. It stems from the lizard brain, from the primitive part of your brain that's trying to keep you alive. And then it does such a good job of creating it that it feels like you're living in that catastrophe already, that it's like hard to look away, and there's something like kind of satisfying about being in it. So this is why catastrophizing happens. It's really natural. It's not something you should feel ashamed of or guilty about. But you should understand that it is not true. It is not the reality. Just because your brain can imagine so fully this doomsday future, this catastrophic future, doesn't mean it's real. Because here's the thing about brains. Your brain is designed to look for evidence to support its own beliefs. This is called cognitive distortion. It just means that when you believe something fully, your brain puts on a filter. It's like looking through rose-colored glasses, except in this case, the rose-colored glasses are like looking for horror instead of good. It's the idea that when your brain really believes something is going to happen, it only sees the evidence of that thing happening. It has a hard time finding contradictory evidence. So, for example, if somebody tells you, like if I were to tell you that GM makes way more white cars than any other color, you would go out throughout your day and be primed to look for white cars made by GM as you drive around. And all of a sudden, every white car would jump out at you and you'd notice all the white cars. And you'd be like, wow, there's so many white cars. And you wouldn't notice all the other cars. And it would seem to you like there's way more white cars than there are other cars, even if that's not true. Because I planted the seed in your brain that that is true, your brain looks for evidence to support it. If I told you that and you said, well, Rachel told me she was going to do this experiment, so I don't want to look for white cars. I want to look for the evidence that there's not a lot of white cars. Your brain would rise to the occasion and find evidence that there's way more blue cars or way more red cars. Your brain is primed to look for evidence to support whatever belief it's trying to support. If you don't believe me, take a look at our political scene right now and look at the red and the blue side, right? People are literally blind to the other perspective. It is so hard, nearly impossible, for most of us to even consider the other side's point of view because we are so biased. We are so intent on finding evidence to support whatever we personally believe about our political leaders, about the pandemic, about the economic sanctions and shutdowns, right? It's really hard to fully see both sides because we're so polarized, and our brains love to be polarized. They love to look for evidence to support one thing over another. So what this does is it makes it really hard to change your view unless you're incredibly intentional about it. Your brain is looking for reasons to continue believing what it believes. That's why it's so hard to convince somebody to change their political views or their religious views or their views on abortion or anything that's really a loaded question. It's so hard to change people's opinions because their brain is looking for evidence to support what they already believe. And this is not a bad thing. This isn't a malfunction of your brain. This isn't like you being stupid or stubborn or single-minded. This is something that we evolved naturally to do. This is how our brain copes with stress, to limit overwhelming sensory inputs. We get so much sensory input every day, all day. Your brain can't process all of it, certainly not consciously. So it filters it out, and it's got to have some criteria for doing that filtering. So it chooses as that criteria, like, what does it already believe? Let's look for evidence of that, because it cannot handle all of the information coming in all the time. So coming back to a marriage or a relationship, some really common beliefs that people have in their relationships are things like, I'm no good at relationships. I'm not a good wife. I'm not a good husband. My last partner cheated on me, so how can I trust somebody new now? I said something stupid. I'm so embarrassed. He must hate me. I burned dinner. She's never going to marry me now. Right? He didn't bring me flowers or kiss me when he came home from work, so he must have found somebody else. He must be into somebody else. These are the kind of beliefs we start with in our relationships, and then we catastrophize from there. It's easy to see how we take this belief like, oh my gosh, I messed up. He's going to be mad. She's not going to love me. And then we spiral in this catastrophizing mindset, and we end up alone under a bridge, unloved, dying of COVID probably, by ourselves with no one around us, right? And it's natural. There's nothing wrong with this. There's nothing wrong with you if you find yourself catastrophizing. This is a natural way that the brain works. But the thing is, it's not useful to you. It doesn't help you. It doesn't help you create the relationship you want. It doesn't help you feel good. It doesn't help you feel confident. So how do you stop? Catastrophizing is happening. You don't want it to. You recognize that it's a normal brain function, but it still sucks. So what do? I would tell you that there are 2 critical steps to stopping this catastrophizing train of thoughts. The first is to get present. Get here, be here now. This is something you can do in a couple of ways, and it depends on how your brain works. So you're going to have to figure this out a little bit on your own. But you need to either focus on what you can see, hear, or feel right now. I mean, like, literally look around you in the room. I see a lamp. I see this glass of water. I see my thumb. Whatever it is, focus all of your attention on that single thing. Look at my map. Stare at Australia. Focus. See it here now. Or maybe you like auditory. Maybe your brain is more primed towards auditory signals. What can you hear? Can you hear the neighbor's dog barking? Can you hear a car going by in the street? Can you hear music playing? What do you feel? Do you feel the chair under your butt? Do you feel your hand on your keyboard? Do you feel, I mean, you can even give yourself a physical sensation. Can you pull your hair? Do you feel it? Feel something, see something, hear something now that exists in this moment. What do I see or hear or feel now? Because your attention, brains are brilliant, you guys. They are so powerful. They can do so many amazing things, but they have limits. Your attention can only be in one place at a time. It can either be external, out there, or internal, in here. And if you are catastrophizing, you are internal. You are inside your brain. You are seeing and hearing and feeling things on the inside. You have a vision of the future. You are thinking about the future. You are imagining some catastrophic doomsday future. That's all internal. If you want to shock yourself out of that, if you want to stop catastrophizing, you have to get in the present, the external present. You have to look at your chapstick and stare at it and get your brain looking, reading Burt's Bees right now. You have to hear the TV playing in the other room, your husband talking, the birds, an owl, whatever it is. To feel the chair under your seat. You cannot, your brain, as brilliant as it is, cannot be internally catastrophizing and staring at this chapstick at the same time. Multitasking really doesn't exist. You cannot be external and internal at the same time. Not possible. So if you want to stop catastrophizing, the first thing you have to do is shock yourself out of it by getting external. Stare at something, read it, focus, listen to something, feel something. Feel your feet on the floor, your breath in your body. Get external. You cannot hang out internally catastrophizing if you force yourself into the external. This is it's like the breakthrough. You notice that you're stuck, you're catastrophizing, you're imagining this horrific future, you're dying alone of COVID under a bridge with nobody loves you. Get present. Look, see, hear, feel now. That's step one. Break out of the catastrophizing, get here, get now, be present. And then once you're there, once you've brought your attention into the external world, give your brain something else to do. Ask it a question. And I want you to ask it a specific question because brains love problems. Brains hate unanswered questions. If you pose a problem or a question to your brain, it is going to try to find the answer. So take advantage of that. Ask your brain to find the evidence that the opposite of your doomsday scenario is true. So in terms of relationships, that would look something like this. What evidence is there that he loves me unconditionally? What evidence is there that we're a great team together? What evidence is there that I am worthy? What evidence is there that I love her, that she is the one for me? Do you see where I'm going with this? I want you to ask your brain a question. Ask it to find the evidence that the opposite of what it's afraid of is actually true. And if you do this and you give it a little time, if you give your brain a little time to do its work, it will find some answers. Ask that question and then shut up. Don't talk to yourself anymore. You've stopped the catastrophizing. You've asked your brain to find evidence that the opposite is true. See what it comes up with. Your brain is powerful, but it has limits. And if you understand those limits, you can take advantage of it and make your brain work for you instead of against you. So instead of spiraling downwards in this catastrophizing, stressful train of thought, you can make your brain work for you. Make it find evidence that good things are true. Make it find evidence that your relationship is amazing. But before you do that, get back in the moment. Break free of that catastrophizing. Focus on what is here, what is now. Get present. And I want you guys also to remember, as you look for evidence that you are worthy, that you love your partner, that your partner loves you, that your relationship is amazing, I want you to be careful because it's so easy to fall into the trap that what everyone else believes is true. And guys, right now, everyone is being crazy. In COVID, with the pandemic, with the lockdowns, people are losing their shit. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that on Facebook Live, but seriously, guys, people are losing it. People are going crazy. Everyone is freaking out. They're like, it's impossible to stay sane when you're stuck at home with your husband and your kids. It's impossible to keep the passion alive when you spend all this time together. Everyone's family is driving them crazy right now. This is not true. Just because everyone else is saying it does not mean it has to be true for you. You get to choose how your relationship is, how you connect with your wife, with your husband, with your kids, with your boyfriend. Like, it is up to you. You get to choose how you look at working from home, how you look at being stuck or getting to spend time with your family, with your loved ones. These are all choices. Ask yourself, pose the question to your brain, What evidence is there that working from home is better for me? What evidence is there that spending this time together is bringing us closer together? What evidence is there that I love my wife, that I love my husband more than I did last month? Ask your brain that question, even if it feels crazy to you, and see what it comes up with. Is there an answer? Brains love to answer questions. So start asking your brain the questions that matter. So be aware that your brain is editing out these things. There's evidence for all of these other sides, all of these other ideas, that you are more worthy, that you are meant to be with the person you're with, that being stuck home together is better for you. There's evidence for that. You're not seeing it if you are stuck on this belief, if you have this cognitive distortion that is bad, that it's not meant to be, that it's not working out. Brains don't see everything in front of them equally. Our brains are always selecting to see evidence of what they already believe. So if you want to beat that, if you want to overcome that and find joy and happiness in your relationships, you have to be aware that your brain is not this objective observer seeing everything like equally. Your brain is picking and choosing what stimulus, what sensory information it processes, and how it processes that. So you get to choose. If you want to see a fuller picture, you're going to have to do that intentionally. So guys, I just want to do a quick recap. We're talking about catastrophizing today, which is such a natural reaction to what is going on in the world. Of course, your brain wants to spiral down these trains of thought where your relationship is doomed, you're never going to be happy, you're probably going to get sick and die of COVID alone under a bridge. Right? This is a natural progression that your brain takes because of the way we evolved to survive, and because of what happens socially. And it's kind of addicting, right? It's like watching a train wreck. Like when you catastrophize, you imagine fully this whole image. It's like having a video playing in your brain of this catastrophic future. And it's kind of addicting to watch. It's like hard to look away. So it's hard to change your train of thought. But at the end of the day, it makes you miserable. So when you notice that this is happening, when you notice you're going down this like rabbit hole of catastrophizing, the first thing you have to do is snap yourself out of it by getting present. Get here, get now. What do you see? What do you hear? What do you feel right now in this moment in the outside world right now? And once you do that, once you kind of snap your brain out of catastrophizing into the present, then you can challenge it with a question. What evidence is there that the opposite is true? The opposite of what I'm afraid is going to happen? What evidence is there that my marriage is stronger than ever? What evidence is there that I am a good person? What evidence is there that this person is my soulmate? Look for the evidence, challenge your brain, ask it to find it for you. And it might feel like you're kind of crazy sometimes, like you're like, okay, well, it's just me in here. But now I'm going to be like, okay, brain, what evidence is there that this person is my soulmate? You're going to be like, wow, I'm just talking to myself, I feel crazy. Ask the question and shut up in your own brain and just see what comes up. I think you'll be surprised, because brains do not like unanswered questions. And there's a whole lot going on, a whole lot of sensory information coming in that you're not aware of because it's been filtered out, right? That's what we've been talking about. Your brain filters these things out. So ask the question and see what comes up, because often it's really, really surprising for people, and it can totally shift your perspective on your relationship and on your future. So guys, that is catastrophizing, and those are the 2 steps to bringing yourself back, to stop being anxious, to stop being depressed because of the catastrophizing. Get present. What do I see, hear, and feel now? And 2, what evidence is there that I'm wrong? What evidence is there that things are better than I think they are? Try those 2 steps. Let me know how it goes. I'd love to see your results, your answers in the comments below. And guys, I know there's a few of you watching live right now. If you have any questions at all about this, I'd love to answer. So please, anything you'd like to know, type it in the comments and I will answer best I can. And for those of you watching on YouTube, please do not forget to click subscribe and click on that little bell. It'll turn on notifications so you'll get all my new videos. I'm going to be putting out a lot of content about anxiety, about catastrophizing, about relationships, and really overall the goal is to help you overcome those intrusive, negative thoughts that are making you anxious and stressing you out in your relationship. That's what I'm here to do. I hope this is helpful. Love to hear from you guys in the comments. So please don't hesitate to write to me. And I will see you tomorrow morning around 8:30 for another live. We're going to talk about cognitive distortion tomorrow. So we're going to get a lot more in depth about what cognitive distortions are and how they may be playing out in your relationships. All right, guys, have a wonderful night, and I will see you soon.